Welcome to the Truth Podcast. I'm your host, Hany Rambod, and I have a very special guest with me this evening, actually, because it's evening where you're at. It's in the middle of the afternoon where I
Yes.
am. But I have bodybuilding IFBB champion Samson Dauda. Thank you so much, Samson. I know we've been
Cool.
talking about trying to do a podcast together for a while.
Yeah, man. Dude, thanks for having me on, man. It's definitely a
Yeah.
privilege. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great seeing you. And I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your wife's name right. Marlena?
Yes.
Marlena,
Yeah.
she, like at the all running around, you guys all over the UK, like when we were at the show, and
Yeah.
it's just great to see your wife being
Uh,
so supportive. I've
Thank you.
heard about her being supportive, but actually seeing it was amazing in the
Yeah.
UK.
Oh man, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, she definitely is the one that she holds me together, man. She does pretty much everything. Other than training me in the gym, she does everything else, you know. I mean, all the running around, all our travels, appointments, everything. She's literally he plays all roles at this point, you know. But
Yeah.
I always said it's her fault because she got me into this. So I'm like, yo, you got to pay the price for getting me into this sport. So,
So
no,
she got you into it, and can you tell a little bit
yeah,
about
yeah,
that? So yeah, I want to hear about
yeah.
that.
So it was 20. I think it was like we met in 2012.
Uh-huh.
We sort of met in the gym just training. Like I was training for a sport because I was a rugby player. So I was just training at my local gym, and she was training there. And we sort of met in there and just started training together. And I think after like 2 years, we just kind of, play messing around, just training together. And she was helping me sort of like just showing me how to train better because at that point I wasn't into the gym at all. I was from just a different sport. So, after like we kind of got to know each other a bit, while she kind of told me like, end of 2013, she was like, you know what, have you ever thought about doing a bodybuilding competition, doing a physique show? And I was all just kind of doing, I was like, yeah, not really my thing, I'm more of like a team sport, rugby player, manly sport guy. I was like, nah, this doesn't really gel with me, you know. So he kind of left it a few months and she kept, she said she'll bring it up once or twice, but I just thought, nah, I didn't really buy into it. And then when I was in the change rooms in the gym, in the rugby club, and guys started noticing that my physique was sort of changing and it was like transforming. So, and they started hinting to me like, have you ever like thought about doing like a physique competition? And I was like, what, you too? I was like, what? They was like, look, dude, like, have you ever thought about it? And I sort of started putting my mind for the first time, actually put some thinking into it, going, actually, maybe there is something to this. So I kind of spoke to her and I was like, okay, what is it? What do we do? What's it about? And I remember at that point, where I was in the UK, very isolated. There's no bodybuilding. There's nothing, no bodybuilders. There's no guys that train for that sport, nothing like that at the time. So we kind of looked, okay, let's look at shows and stuff. So we found a local show that happens every once a year in our town. And I was like, look, let me just give you a run. I want to sign in for that show. Let's just see where it goes. And that show was happening in like April 2014.
Mhm.
So me and her, we've only know the outside of what we know about bodybuilding is basically what we see on TV and Arnold. That was it. We didn't know anything about bodybuilding in particular. We don't know what the judging is. We don't know what the posing is. We didn't know anything about it. So we both sat in our apartment at the time, and then we both brought up YouTube and started researching. Okay, what is bodybuilding? What
Okay.
are the poses? What's this? What's that? What do you do? What you're meant to do? What you're meant to see? And we basically did all our research together through, I was YouTubing all I can. She was reading books and all the, encyclopedia of bodybuilding and all that. She was doing a
Wow.
lot of reading on that side, and I was doing all the research and learning about the history of the Olympia and everything else through on YouTube. And I was going back and researching, ways. I remember even when we first practiced, our first time even trying posing was her apartment, and we were sort of watching Lila Brada videos on how to hit the poses. And I was looking at the video. She goes, no, you got to put your leg this way. You got to do, and we were both practicing how to do posing together in our apartment. So it was kind of crazy. And, she was a lot more scientific and a lot more clued on to that part. She studied a lot. I mean, she studied social care and mental health in her job. So she was
Okay.
really into like learning about the ins and outs of the workings of the body and the mind and everything to go around that. So for her, studying that side of it and the chemistry and the idea of bodybuilding and the body and how it works was her thing. She just dove into that. But for me, I was more the sports and the blunt instrument, just tell me what I got to do and I'll do it, the kind of guy. So we were kind of having those two mixed together, and that was how we just kind of formed this thing where we're like, okay, this is it. So I did my first show. She was like, she literally prepped me for my first show. She was like, okay, I'll do your diet. You just do the training bits. And she showed me like how the muscle, what the muscle, because I remember at this point, I didn't know what deltoid is. I didn't know what pecs are. I didn't know what quads, hamstrings. I didn't, all this is like, we're learning
How
about
big
this,
were
like the
you when
body.
you were a
I
rugby
was
player?
extremely skinny. I was 11 stone, like, I think they said 150 pounds. You know,
150
I was a,
pounds. At what
yeah,
you were like 6'1"?
6 foot tall,
You're 6 foot tall.
6 foot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, so for me, I was always, through my whole life, I've always been skinny. I
150
was one of those,
pounds. And so do you have genetically, has everybody in your family been thin?
everybody in my family's been thin. I'm first one ever to be able to put on muscle in my
Wow.
family. They've all
Wow.
been really tall. I mean, most of the family, you probably think, oh, we're more close to be basketball players because my brother is 6'5". My other
Wow.
brother is 6'2". My youngest brother is so much taller than me. He's like 6'3".
So you're
So I
you're
was
the
one,
little guy. You're the
I'm
little
the
one.
shortest one in the family.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You're the shortest
always, you
one,
know.
not the littlest
Yeah,
one,
so
but
so
back
you know, we
then
were
maybe.
all, you know, yeah. So we're all skinny and tall. This is
Uh-huh.
our genetics. I mean, we had the ability where we eat anything and nothing happens. You know, those kind of genetics where you can get away with eating everything and just long limbs. You know, very long torsos and so bodies like that. You know, that's all we kind of are in our family. So for me to pursue this, one, I did not like to eat. I don't. I was horrible. I was one of the guys that have breakfast and I'll go all day at my job. I don't do big eating. I don't do any of that. So this sport, when she even came to my girl, she always used to laugh at me, going, "You picked the one sport that truly does not suit you. You don't like to eat. You don't good in public. You don't like to socialize. You literally pick one sport that everything about it doesn't match you as a person." But I was like, okay, you know what? One thing I did like about it was the idea that coming from a team sport where it was always, no matter how good you played, you know, it was always about the team.
Mhm.
So when you're in a team sport, that it was always kind of like that, where you can play the best game of your day, and you know, if the team loses, you all lose.
Right.
So coming down to individual sport, where it was all about you, your effort, what you do, you dictate the results. For me, that just matched into me so well. It was just like, yeah, you know what, this is something I sort of jive to. So that for me, the training part of going to the gym and just being able to lock in, close my eyes, and just I was close out the outside world and just train. That just suited me to a T. That was like, yeah, this is me. This is why I let everything out. This is where I could be me, you know. So that really gelled well for me. So that's how we kind of started, was basically that. And she was like, look, you train this way, you learn the muscle groups, you train the quads, train this, train that, and I'll do your diet and let's see how it goes. So that's the way we just kind of came about, and you know, did our first bodybuilding show. It was like the first time, it was like the local first timer show.
Yeah.
And I remember going to the promoter of the show at the time and just saying, look, I've never done this before. I only started training 6 months ago, you know, for bodybuilding. Can you just sign me in and see how I go? And he was like, yeah, of course, man. So signed in, did the first time. It was the first thing in the morning. And I remember the day of that show was the same day the first Generation Iron DVD came out.
Okay.
That was the day that show happened, because I remember we were watching in her apartment when she just got DVD before we went to the show. And that was the first time ever I actually saw the bodybuilding world. And it just blew my mind. I was like, I was like, holy shit, this is something insane, you know. I'm like, wow, it was cool as hell. I was like, man, I freaking love it, you know. So
So
kind
the
of went to the
first one
show.
was the one with Kai and Phil.
Yep. That was my very first one. That's the very first glimpse into like the bodybuilding world in that sense of it, you know. So for me, that was it was really my introduction into it, you know. So I
And
remember
your
we
wife
finished
was
that.
never she was never a trainer before you guys started
She
dating, right?
she was a PT in, because she came from Poland, so she was a PT and nutritionist in Poland.
Oh, she
So
was.
she
Okay, so she was a
Yeah,
personal
so she
trainer
already
and
knew that side. Yeah, you
got it.
know, but she was never like purely bodybuilding sort of thing, or
Okay.
being into the bodybuilding world for the first time. It was basically with me. So, you know, that was kind of like, you know, where we just kind of fit and just started. We got this new thing that we were learning together. And it sort of brought us a lot closer, because it was like this was the thing we were working on and we were both committed into it. So I remember, you know, did my first show that morning, did the first time a show, came up. I mean, I was terrible as a person, because I was so embarrassed. I was just this guy that I mean, I was kind of guy that even when we were at the beach in holiday, I wouldn't even take my t-shirt off.
Got it.
Even in pool, I just never, I didn't, I was so anti anti attention. I really did not do well being
Uh-huh.
center of attention. I was always inverted. I was always quiet. I was always in the back. Always wanted to be in the back of the room. I never wanted to draw any kind of attention to me. So when you're now in this position where it's like, okay, you got to go on stage, strip off the underwear. For me, this was always, even the whole prep we were going for that show, was always the problem was like, would you be able to actually do that in public like that? And we were never sure if I could do it because we just like, I was just like, we'll find out when we get there. But we really didn't know if I could do it. So when we were at the show and we were backstage and they were like, okay, boys, first timers, get ready. And I'm just like, I was standing there. It took me 20 minutes to actually take my clothes off because I was standing there. I was like, I can't do it. And she was like, we got to go. We got to get pumped up. We got to go. I was like, no, I just can't do it. And I stood there for just waiting and waiting. Then eventually I remember I had to turn around, face the wall, and imagine the room. There was nobody in the room.
Uh-huh.
And then took my clothes off there.
Wow.
And it was literally like, okay, it was frightening. I mean, my knees were shaking. I was trembling. I was thinking, oh my God, why did I do this? Why did I choose to do this?
So when
And
you
I
were
remember
leading
like,
up to it, did you think that you were going to possibly like 50-50 bail out of your first
yeah,
show?
yeah, oh yeah. It was like I was enjoying the training bit and everything else and the idea of it. But the final finale of would you be able to stand on stage in front of all these people and show yourself off? That was like, okay, I'm not sure. So it's like they line us up backstage and they're like, okay, guys, walk onto the stage. And I remember then I've never felt fear like that in my life. I was petrified. I was like, and that time I had my family came to watch, my friends were watching, and I'm thinking, whoa, why did you choose to do this? And then we walk up the stage and we walk into the lights and a switch just went off. And that's the only way I can describe it. I walked out and I was confident. I was walking up and down. I was hitting pose. I was like, yeah, let's go, let's go. And I was very confident. And I was like, yeah, hitting the most muscular, calling shots, smiling, like, yeah, I got this. And I walk off the stage and we both stopped and looked at each other and we both just like, where the hell did that come from? And I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know. And I'm like, geez. And he was like, what's this? And it was completely the very first time ever I stood in front of people like that. And I actually looked like I was knew what I was doing, you know. So I was in shock. We were just like, man, this is not you at all. Like, what was that? What was that all about? So we did the first timers class, and then results came in. I won the first timer that morning. And for me, I was like the biggest achievement. I'm like, we both put our mind into this thing. We've never done it before. We didn't have an idea. And we both did it together. And now we've come away with this reward of we won and we got it. And for us, it was just like, man, the journey has just been amazing. So I remember when we won that, the promoter of the show saw me and he was like, kid, honestly, you're really impressive. You got a good future going in this sport if you ever really think about taking it seriously. And he was like, look, the older guys, the open guys are going to be showing up later tonight. I want you to stay here and jump on stage with them.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, I already got the win. What can I lose? I'm like, I want to go back on stage and do it again because at this
Sure.
point I'm excited. So I'm like, yeah, okay. So we stayed the whole day, and then the evening coming up, and they brought me in with like the older open guys.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at these guys and I'm just thinking, oh crap. I'm like, damn, this is
It's a bit bigger,
this
a
is a
little
bit
bit
much.
bigger.
This is a bit much. This is oh my. I'm like, this is not happening. I'm like, wow, this is serious. And I remember one of the guys that were watching the show, he came around backstage to me and he was like, kid, man, you're really special. You got to really take this seriously. And I was like, and he goes, you know what? I think you probably win this class too. And I'm like, what the hell are you on about? I'm like, do you see what I see? Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And I kind of just shoved it off, like, whatever. And then we walk on stage, we go through the poses again,
Mhm.
and the results come out. And they call in fourth place, fifth place, going all the way third. And I'm like, what the hell? And then it's like me and this other gentleman that were there. And I remember the promoter, he was saying, okay, this kid only just walked into my gym an hour about 6 months ago, and he wanted to do this show. And I would like to present to you the winner. And I'm just blown away. I'm just like, what the heck? What? Like, I
You just
just
won.
really? And it was at that moment, I think at that moment was the first moment where I felt like, okay, you know what? Maybe this is something that I should really take seriously. Maybe this is something that I should really look into and thinking is possible, you know, because then I was still playing rugby at the same time. So for me, it was like, this was just a trial thing. Rugby was my main thing.
What did you
So at that
weigh
moment,
at your first show?
I was, what was it? I was just about 92 kilos. What is that in pounds? I can't remember what that is in pounds.
Probably 92 kilos in pounds. It's about 102 times 2.2, about 100 and high 80s, maybe 190. 202. You could have
Yeah.
done the 202 class back
I
in the
could have
day.
done two classics for sure,
Before it
you
became the
know.
212.
Oh,
That's a little bit of irony.
oh man,
Now you're going up
that
against the
was
212 guys.
I know, really. Oh God. So yeah, you know, so for
So,
me
but
that was
so you're telling me that you put on 50 pounds of
oh yeah,
muscle,
oh yeah. This is
50 pounds of muscle in 6 months?
in 6 months.
That
This
is
is,
insane.
you know, it's one thing that we've sort of always noticed with me was like once we got me eating properly and got me training, I was always able to put on muscle quite consistently.
Okay.
And it was always one of those things, especially when you're just starting bodybuilding really
Hmm.
first time, you always have that drastic gains. So for me, that was always like one of those biggest draw because when you see the results, it fires you up to work even harder.
Hmm.
And the more you see you're going from now, you're already the skinny guy. And now people are going, oh, hey, big man. Hey, big. I'm like, ooh, this is nice. This is new. I'm like, oh, yeah, big man. Hey, you know, and
Yeah,
it
you
fires
like
you up.
that one.
Yeah, because now you're being noticed for the first time. You're being noticed that you actually are a big guy. You have muscle. I'm like, ooh, this is, you know, and the more it makes you want to go back and like, yeah, let's go get some more. So, you know, we kind of noticed that consistently I was able to sort of like, as long as doing that, I was able to grow
Hmm.
consistently through it. And even when we went from show to show, year to year, I always felt like we always kind of looked at it like every year I always seem to be able to put on 10 pounds of muscle. And it's just that regularity that has always happened. And I don't want my friend Chris, he always says to me that, oh, this will be it. You weren't going to put any more on. And then the following year, it's like, here you go. And again, he'll be like, oh no, this is, you definitely hit your wall ceiling. You ain't going to put any more on. And it always seems to just happen that way. And it was always one of those things where we're just like, okay, whatever you do is working. Just make sure that as long as you're making sure that it's coming on properly, you're very proportionate and you're not over dominating one side. So we had to really structure my training around that. That well, like when I first started, I had no calves, I had no shoulders, like
Okay.
completely just on stick. So I mean, mom, she always just take like literally take jokes out of me, going, "I got bigger calves than you." And I always kind of laugh, going, no. And even I was always getting the stigma that people were telling me, going, when I even tried to train them, people were like, oh, why are you bothering training calves? Black guys don't have calves. There's no point. You ain't going to grow calves. You're a black guy. You ain't never. I'm like, hey, that's a bit of a thing. You know, I'm like, yeah. So that really kind of drove me to kind of like, nah, I'm going to get him, you know. So, you know, we kind of made sure that those muscle groups that were always kind of weak for me, we put full attention on those ones to make sure that you stay balanced, stay promotional as you're growing. So it's one thing that we've always kind of been like really strong at. And through time, we just slowly sort of like got into that. And the more every year we did it, the more we just picked up knowledge and picked up ideas on how to, and then learned about how my body sort of works from that point, you know.
And so when you were doing all of that, what did you feel was the best training method? Was it something that you were using on a consistent basis, or were you just changing things up as you were going, or what was the?
When I first started, I was using different training methods because I was always, you know, you're reading about different guys recommending different things.
Mhm.
And any muscle group that I was always finding that was a struggle that I wasn't keeping up, I would try to do something different, you know, or try, you know, high intensity, high volume, or I'll do
Mhm.
try training 3 times a week, 1 time a week, every day. I'll
Mhm.
try all the different styles and techniques I can just to see which one work. And so after a while, we always seem to land on one that just seems to feel
Right.
right. And then you seem to see progression happen from that. And then we just start following that. And with different muscle, we always had like a different style for every muscle. I mean, and it was kind of always part of just learning and trying to figure out, okay, what works for you and what do you know you can do and keep consistent in, and what are you doing to avoid injury and not trying to push too far. So
What
obviously when
did
you're
you
first,
feel was the most beneficial for you when you said what you landed on? I think you hit a good
yeah,
point there. What did you feel was the best? Was it more high volume? Was it
it was
more
always, yeah,
hit?
it was more the high hit and high volume. That for me he almost replicated what I was doing in rugby, where it was very explosive, very high intensity, and then a short break, and then back at it again, and then short break, where throughout the whole session, your heart is literally pounding and you feel like you're gonna
So
die.
it's more high
So
volume.
yeah, so for me, that just it was just my bread and butter. That just worked so great for me. So when we had our sessions, we kind of tailored it around that. Is instead of trying to push heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier,
Mhm.
which was only going so far, it was okay. When we start making it more of that high volume training and that sort of hit style training, it just resonated very well with me, you know. And so we kind of noticed now, and that's where we kind of carried it on. So it's kind of warped it to see how it fits me today.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people, that's what they do. They kind of go through their journey and they'll say, hey, look, I tried the heavier stuff. And you can
Yeah,
only progress so much with continuing to go heavier.
yeah,
And eventually you're going to top out. And then it's
yeah,
going to be quality of reps and then the quantity of reps instead of the just quantity of weight.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that's it. You know, and I definitely found like, you know, especially through the time as well, the older we started getting, you start noticing that okay, your joints can take as much beating as you used to, and there's things like that that was like, okay, you got to be more cautious with, and you got to always keep an eye out and say, okay, right, you can't just go heavy and keep going heavy and squat heavy and punch heavier and heavier. At some point, something will start giving. So we're trying to maintain the muscle quality and try to build on that, but not try to exceed the amount where your joints can't take it anymore. So we're always kind of very cautious around that.
Well, I think you guys have done a great job. So what year did you turn pro and what show?
So we turned pro in Italy in 2017.
Okay.
So that was I think it was Diamond Cup in Italy at the time. And that was when there was the federation was still kind of joined together. It was basically the period where they were both separating. So the IABB elites and the IABB when they were having that separation. And I think that was probably the last show before, because I know at the time they already had the shows planned out for the year. And then when the separation happened, there was a certain show that was guaranteed to get your pro card. I mean, at the UK, if you remember, for a long time, the UK was only one pro card given a year.
Right.
So so it was kind of like one of those scrambles for whatever you can get at the point. So they already had the shows planned out. And then when the separation happened, a lot of guys here in Europe and the UK, we were confused. We didn't know, what do we do? It's like,
Right.
okay, how do we still get if we do this show that we're prepping for, do we still get a pro card of that? Or, what's happening? Are we,
Mhm.
and they were giving out a lot of misinformation at the time as well. So
Right.
the IFBB elite was saying, okay, we're the real IFBB and
Right.
we're the way to go to the Olympia. The other one, IFBB was saying, oh no, we're the real IFBB. So for you to Europe, you were, especially if you didn't speak English,
Right.
you were totally screwed. You didn't know what was what. So they played a lot on that, try to get guys to do come this way and come that way. So when we had a Diamond Cup planned out for that show, I think they were giving it to the overall. It was kind of like, okay, what does this mean? What do you actually get? So I remember emailing the IBB and asking them, look, I'm really confused. I don't know, would this qualify me to have a pro and whatnot? And they put out this email saying any pro card that has been promised for the rest of that year, they will still acknowledge. So if you're designed trained to win a pro show, pro qualifier, if you win that show, you still get your pro card. So for
Your
me, I was like,
IFBB
oh,
Pro League Pro
your
card.
IIBB Pro League Pro card.
Yes.
So I was like, okay, wow, this is great. So we flew up to Rome, went to Italy. I mean, I remember Andrea Munzi, Andrea Presti. There was those guys are here today. They were at that show as well.
Yeah.
So we've been competing against for a long while. So that was a show I won to get my pro card at that time, and the IBB then obviously acknowledged it, and that was when we turned pro in 2017.
Wow. Wow. And I guess when you were coming up, who did you have a mentor or did you have anybody? I know your wife has a lot to do with it, but was there
Yeah,
anybody else that besides?
yeah. There was another guy. He was a British champion at the time. He was Chris Jones. He owns a gym that I've been going to. I mean, I've been friends with Chris for a long, long time. And what happened was at the time when I was very young, I was working in a hospital as a
Mhm.
porter. And I remember then when I just started there, I got told that I got to go to the gym and train more. I spoke to a lady that was a nurse, and we were just kind of chatting. I said, yeah, I'm thinking about going to the gym. I'm gonna put on some muscle. And she said, oh, you need to speak to my husband. He's a bodybuilder. And I'm like, oh, he owns a gym just down the road from us. So you need to go speak to him. I remember going to Chris's gym for the first time, and I told him that, look, it was this dark dungeon gym, right, the basement of a building, very grimy, very thing. And he was the very first bodybuilder I ever met. And I remember walking in there as a kid, walking in there, this dark, like basement, just dark alleyway. And I go in this building and there's all these big guys standing in reception. And I literally crapped myself. I was like, holy crap. I was like, okay, I came to the wrong place and I just go back out. And they were really friendly with me. They were like, oh, hey, you all right? What can we do for you? And that was the first experience where first time I had that experience where it was like, just because a guy is big and muscular and they look this way doesn't necessarily mean it's your perception of, oh, they're just these big violent men. They're actually really friendly.
Mhm.
So they were really welcoming to me. And, Chris at that point started talking to me about, okay, you need to diet, you need to eat more, you need to just give me the basics of what you need to do. And ever since then, we've just been friends. And funny enough, Chris was a big Dorian Yates fan, like massive. Up to now, he's still a big Dorian Yates fan. And over the year, I've gone back to him and I've trained with him almost every week and time again. And he always laughs. He's going, honestly, I cannot I remember the day in 2009 where you walked in my gym, this skinny little kid, and you're going, oh, I want to put on some muscle. And he looks at you today and going, how? No one would have ever thought that you would be here now. It was nobody. We were all big bodybuilding fans, big Dorian fans, we never thought of everybody, one of us that was going to make it that level. It would have been you, you know. So he has always been a massive supporter. He has always kind of guided me and steered me the right way around things and told me things to be mindful of and things to be more cautious of. And, I've always kind of gone back to him every week and we train back and we train different sessions. And, I always talk to him and give him like the interest of what's happening. And he's always kind of looked at me in disbelief and going, man, I cannot believe after all this time that you actually did it.
The
So,
skinny guy, the skinny kid that came
yeah,
into his. So I
yeah,
guess at 2009, you must have been playing rugby then, right?
yeah,
When you were
yeah,
trying to be strong for rugby before
yeah.
the bodybuilding experience.
Before bodybuilding came in. So it was one of those things where it was just like because I was playing rugby and you got to take tackles,
Right.
and the guys at rugby club is like, look, dude, you're really skinny, you know, maybe start going to the gym and try to put on some mass so you can actually take a hit. So that was when I actually got in the gym in 2009, saying, okay, I just got to put on some more pounds and put on some muscle. So yeah, that was sort of how I got introduced to Chris. And Chris he just gave me a diet. He was just like, look, you need to, because at that point you didn't even know like what you were supposed to do. And he was like, okay,
Nothing.
what do you eat for breakfast? I'm like, oh, I have a slice of toast. And no, no, okay, you got to eat some oats and eggs. You got to eat more food. You got to take in this much calorie. You got to do this. And he wrote me like a simple diet and just told me, here, give this a go. I remember even then, I came back to him I think about 6 weeks later. Even then, he was like, what the hell happened to you? And he goes, and he always says this story to me going, the amount of times I've had kids come to the gym, said, oh, I want to put on muscle, I want to do this. And I've spoken to them and I've given them diets and stuff. And they go away and I never see them again. And when I see them, they don't follow it, nothing happens. He
Right.
goes, you were the first one that came back after months later. And I looked at him going, holy shit, like you actually followed it, worked. You actually put it on size. So he noticed it way back then, like, okay, I have the idea of actually being able to respond to things and sort of transform that way. But even then, it was like, okay, I was doing it mainly just for rugby. It was always like, okay, I'm going back to rugby because I can, sort of get on with that.
That's awesome. So when you did that in 2009, how old were you when you came from, because you're originally from Nigeria, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I came to Nigeria. I was 15 when I traveled. Our family came to the UK. That was in 2001.
Okay.
And it was life sort of like came for education purpose and want a better life and stuff like that. And I remember when we came here, we moved literally into central London, and I was going to a secondary school in London there, and it was one of those kind of really like hard communities and very diverse community and everything else. And coming from Nigeria, you're just coming with the idea of a better life. You didn't really sort of anything in the UK was like glamorous. You didn't really think much of it. So the school we kind of came in there. I remember when I first came in, I was what 15, 16 at the time, and I couldn't read. I couldn't read, couldn't write, couldn't really do much, speak clean English anyway. And the teacher at the time was the first time that I actually had teachers from school actually said, look, and actually teach me and try to sort of like educate me properly. Because in the whole time in Nigeria, I was in boarding house in Nigeria. It was more of a military school than actually anything. So kind of coming to the UK was the first time where I saw what it was like when an adult actually teaches you something. And one of those things that I've always been mindful is the idea of people who always know more than you do. So
Yeah.
even whether you like it or not, you always got to open your ears and listen and learn. Try to learn as much as you can. And when you spend most of your life, even with my parents and stuff, uh, they haven't been the biggest support from a long time. So, you're just a stupid kid. You're not smart. You don't know what you're doing. It's hard upbringing, when you're coming from that and coming to a place where someone's actually, you can do this, right? Yeah, and I can show you how to do it. You can do this, and someone putting that much effort into actually trying to make you better. It's a big change. It's a big thing.
Yeah, when you went into school in London and not knowing, I guess you didn't really was English language was a very like secondary thing for you. You didn't
Yeah,
have really
you didn't have time because in Nigeria we have like this broken English and broken terms. So
okay.
a lot of English, we understand the basic words, but not enough to really follow a conversation like that. And as well as even the English phrases and stuff like that, you had to pick up that as well. So because that's why one reason I was always quiet. I didn't want people to really know how I spoke, so I stayed quiet and I just listened more, nod my head, and, yeah, yeah, you know. So because the time you felt like, okay, by the time they see how bad you are at speaking, they always think, okay, yeah, you are stupid. You don't really know what you're doing. You are this kind of guy. So it was one of those things where you spend a lot of time sort of like just being quiet and listening. And you
Uh-huh.
always want to stay at the back of the classroom or the back in the
Sure.
corner, and you always stay sort of blend into the background and just listen instead of any light shown to you. So that was basically most of my childhood, all through to my mid 20s. This has always been my life and how I sort of lived to get by. And I try always to kind of not, even when I was good at sports and good at things,
Hmm.
I never want to draw any attention to it because it was always this thing of you didn't want any sort of attention. So even even well, I noticed that, I mean, no, noticed more when I was playing rugby. I tried not to play as good as I was because I didn't want the attention of how good I was ever being seen and drawing that attention to it. So even though I get the ball and I can run half the field and do it, I would never actually just outright do it. I always hold back. And I always find, Mel said, you always find an excuse to not to justify you not wanting to push any harder. You always say, okay, the coach doesn't like me, or these people they don't believe I can do it. So you always use that to justify you not really trying to aim and get that goal, because you just you don't want to be in the limelight. You don't want to be seen,
But
you
why
know.
do you think
And
that is? Do you think that it was because you just felt, I guess, what was going on in your head that you didn't want to be in the limelight?
I mean, it took a long while for me to sort of figure this out because we sort of like working myself over years and years and years. And it was one of those things where when we were kids, growing up in Nigeria is like this we have this saying, the nail that sticks out get the hammer,
Hmm.
So we always kind of put out this idea of if you do something really well, you're a show off. If you do something you're really good at something, oh, you're trying to outsource the other kids or try to outshine the other kids. They bully you for it. So you always kind of learn to just reserve yourself. And in the other hand, where you then have like adults and parents and people that don't encourage that, they're more the other way around with it. You then realize, okay, the more you actually disappear and just stay in the background and just live that way, the more peace you have. So you never really you just want to do enough to get by, but never really doing enough to actually stand out.
Do you feel like that with the immigrant mentality, I've noticed a lot of people, they kind of, whether you want to be forward facing or like you said, kind of be in the back of the room and try to strive to excel. Did you feel like as you were coming up with that mentality, were your parents kind of like supporting you at all with anything like, especially when you came into the bodybuilding scene?
Yeah.
Because
Um,
it sounded like you're a reporter and you were doing some other jobs,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I was obviously doing a lot of work and doing the whole thing. And it was always this whole thing where it was like, you go from like really manual labor jobs because that was something you sort of strive at. It's like, okay, working construction, I mean, I work as a refuse bin man, refuse collector,
Mhm.
street cleaner. I've worked as a postman. I've worked a lot of different jobs and a porter and all these jobs to get by. And it was always this kind of thing where my parents always felt like we obviously the immigrant mentality, if you're not like book smart and you're not like aiming to be an engineer or a doctor or anything, you're useless. You're not what you're doing. So when you don't sort of show that part of things, they don't look at you as, oh, you can do this other thing very well. They just look at you as in, or you're failing. So that shunning part of it has already begun from that point on. So growing up, this was sort of what you were. So when I even started bodybuilding, I remember I didn't tell my parents about it. I was like, no, I'm not gonna, because you already kind of saw that the blowback was gonna be, what do you think you're doing? Standing up stage, taking your pants off. What kind of man? This is not a manly thing to do. So it was always kind of like that fear of that. So I think it was the first or second show I did, local newspaper reporter actually reported a story and they put me in the newspaper for the first time. And I felt, for me, it was just a local newspaper, but I felt so proud. I felt so,
Sure.
my God, I can't believe that. Look, I'm a newspaper. I felt so proud about it that I took it home and I took it back home to go show my parents and everything else. And I remember they reading the magazine and reading, going, okay, so how much are you going to get paid for this? And,
Wow.
for me, I was like, no, you don't get paid, but there's more to it. Like you're trying to explain to them, like, look, this achievement is it's something,
This process.
yeah, and it's like it wasn't seen that way. Put it that way, it just wasn't seen that way. So it took a long time for them to actually finally. I think it's only at a later stage in the last few years they've actually finally say, okay, oh, this thing you're actually doing is really a big thing,
Yeah.
So it was always one of those things. You just felt like the more the good news were coming in, you didn't want anybody to spoil it for you. You didn't want them to spoil it, so you didn't tell them. You just kept it with yourself, kept it with your family, kept it with those people that are really happy for you. So, you didn't, because you knew what was coming every time you asked. You knew what was coming every time you showed them something good. It was always, oh, so what are you gonna do for us? Well, what's the financial benefit? What's this? It was never seen just for, okay, achievement. So yeah, so it was definitely sort of a strange way to kind of look at it in that side.
Yeah. I think also, when you look at whether it's the Middle East or North Africa or even in Europe, people don't look at many countries don't look at bodybuilding as a sport, right?
No.
And as if you're playing soccer or you're playing rugby, maybe,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
looking at that there could be a
That,
professional
mhm,
league, there's
yeah,
something like that. They don't look at bodybuilding as something that
bodybuilding.
can be able to pay your bills and be able to
Yeah,
actually thrive in. And I feel
yeah,
like a lot of our parents grew up that way, saying, "What
yeah,
is this?" It's
yeah.
more of a hobby, not a career,
No, Korea. Yeah. So
right?
yeah, so it was basically that sort of mentality, that's what they sort of had towards it. So I mean, the thing at that point, I think, well, I was already grown up enough where I wasn't living at home. I was pretty much fending for myself. So it was a point where you were sort of, a long time still seeking approval from them and nothing else. It was just that idea of, okay, let them be proud of me and let them be happy for me and let them be, just say that, look, great job, well done, you
Mhm.
know. Because remember, I mean, this one I always said, like, this memory has always kind of haunted me. And I've always used it, especially when I went to the gym. Because I know sometimes Mel will see me in the gym and I'll doing a set and I'll have tears come out of my eye while I'm doing a set. And she always goes like, when you're in the gym, you go to a really dark place. And I'm like, I know. And she goes, you really go to a dark place. And I could see it. I was like, yeah, I know. I know where that strive of going to the gym and always doing sports and letting out that rage, I know where it's coming from. So, when I remember the memory I had with my dad when I first moved out, the day I moved out of my house because he wasn't happy about Rico in a big fight. And I remember him saying to me, you know what, if you had a son like you, would you ever be proud of him? And I kind of like, okay, thank you. And I left. And we didn't speak for years after that. It was
Wow.
until
And
it
when
was
when was
until
this?
this was back in 2019, I believe, when I first
Really?
moved out. Yeah. So I remember that I remember that conversation very well because it was one that really stung and it really sort of hurt me deeply then. And I've never come back. I never went back to speak to him about it. I just kind of just like, look, this is the past, what is. But I remember very well what he said to me, and I was like, damn. And at a time where I was just working a normal job, I was trying to just get by. You felt like there was a bit of him that was right, and that was kind of the bit that made it sort of hurt. And it was like, you kind of feel like, well, what did I go wrong? What did I do right? Why didn't I turn out to be successful? and to please to sort of get this validation, get this idea of or praises from him. And it was yeah, it was one of those ones that, it's been there for a long time. And it's like, okay, and it's only with a lot of work and a lot of time that it's come to the idea where it's like, yeah, you know what, you don't need it, you know. And by the time he actually started coming and he was sort of now more, it just felt like it was too late. It didn't feel like it didn't mean anything anymore.
Wow. So that was already a couple years after turning pro,
Yeah.
and he was basically still just not happy enough. Like he just really wasn't still happy for you in regards
Mm.
to what you've accomplished. Yeah,
No,
that
because
had to
he
really, really
yeah,
stung.
yeah. Because it felt like you weren't, because their measure of success, obviously being African, their measure of success is always financial.
Right.
It's always what car you drive and what
That's right.
house you live in, what money. It was never like, look, there's more to it than that. It was always very simple, very straightforward. So when you're going to that, you're not showing that they can deem you as in, oh, you're successful,
Yeah.
and you have nothing to show to them to say, I don't know what you have. Like, look, I'm a pro now. I'm this. You got nothing else to show to them. Like, look, trust me, I'm getting somewhere. So it was, yeah, it was definitely more difficult ones.
So you said he does come to some of the shows now, or
He came to the first show he ever came to was when we had the Arnold UK, the very first Arnold UK. I think that happened. What year did that happen? Um, I remember he came to that, and then lately he came to the Arnold, and I think that was where he was very surprised to see, because I know he was shocked to see how many people were at the expo and how many people were actually at the show.
right?
And he was like,
And how
"Oh,
many
this,
fans you have, and how many people
and
want to
that,
come and take a photo with
yeah,
you?
you know, and I think that was when the realization of, okay, this is something. This is more to it. Started coming in, and we over there, we always had sort of like had a really hard relationship. He's always been he was a very strict dad, obviously, and I was always trying to always kind of try to live up to that. And through time, we just kind of realized, this is as close as we're ever gonna be. Is that moment of, okay, good job, that was it, and you should keep going. And so we felt as how had that relationship kind of going on and off for a long time, because even now people are like, oh, you're not close to your parents like that. I'm like, yeah, we probably maybe speak once or twice a year, but that'll be it. And
Wow.
it's just, I've been thinking, I've sort of grown up with this, boarding house. You're away from your parents. Moved
Right.
to this when we came here. I moved in. I was living with my stepmom. Moved out. So we never really. I was never in a position where I had really a bonding relationship with any of my parents like that. That was really sort of stuck. But yet we had a lot of confrontation and stuff like that going through us. So in that stead, it sort of kind of lined out the way kind of things moved on to the future.
Got it. Got it. Well, and I think that also maybe strengthens your bond with your wife too, right?
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the family unit's so important for bodybuilding, and how much, people have your back, because it's not as much as it's just you on stage, it's about your team
It's
that's
fun.
getting you
Yeah.
there, you know?
Yeah, oh, yeah, definitely. Because even like when I first met her, it's like the way, because she was a social worker, so she always deals with a lot of like people that have been through a lot. So
Mhm.
for me, she just kind of she never really came up and said, okay, you know you're like this, or but she did sort of give me the little hints, because I was, even though I didn't listen at the time, I was like, what the hell are you talking about?
Right.
Who the hell do you think you're talking about? You talking to me that way? But she did sort of nudge little ideas and say, look, do you ever think that the reason why you're like this because of this, or you're like that? And she got me a lot to sort of take up working on myself. And she got me listening to audiobooks and listening to motivational books and leading and listening and sort of learning about these things and sort of improving that caliber to be able to talk to someone and look at them in the eye while you speak to them, and be more open and be more accepting of myself. And instead of, you know, trying to just blend in, I just stand out and say no and be confident to be able to do that. So she had to help me, basically had to help me grow up, you know. So I think because we went through all that, we went through so much, because even when we got together, it was just us. It wasn't, we didn't have, she didn't, her family was in Poland and my family was so far away that it was just us in this town by ourselves. And we had to sort of learn, and take all the snack and everything that came with it and learn together on how to build each other up. So we went through a lot of that struggle, and it was like it kind of just kind of brought us a bit closer because of it.
Yeah. I mean, with you guys, being in the UK and then coming over to America, do you feel like is there a big difference between the UK and America when you come
Oh
back and
yeah,
forth? What do
yes,
yeah, can you
yes.
kind of expand on that? Because I'd love to hear your
It's
view on that.
because in like America, they're a lot more positive, a lot more positive. People are a lot more open-minded. They're a lot more accepting. They're a lot more gracious, and they're a lot more. They're more they look more things in a lot more in the positive side than the UK. UK is they're very more sort of more restricted, more withheld. So you have people that kind of like they don't really just kind of show their emotions so openly and tell you, oh man, no, good morning, how you doing? And because if you go to someone, you're walking on the street and someone in the UK, you tell them, hey, good morning, they'll look at you like, who the hell are you?
Yeah, what's wrong
You know,
with you?
so what's going on with you? So when we come to the States and he's like, oh, how you have a good day? Good, we're like, okay, thank you. And it's like you
That's
saw pick up
Texas,
on that,
brother.
right?
That's
And
Texas.
it really
That's in
feels
Texas.
like that. And people are a lot more, and even in terms of bodybuilding, because UK for a long time, I mean, now it's getting different. For a long time, bodybuilding was looked at negatively in the UK. It
Okay.
was always this meathead, big dude, and it was always a stereotype that follows that. But when you came to the US, and you're walking the street, everybody going, dude, great work. And I'm like, whoa, this is awesome. This is like wow, they really like bodybuilding. They really like that. You definitely notice the difference a big time when you've been one and the other. You're like, okay, this is definitely a different attitude towards people.
That's yeah. I mean, what about in terms of just do you feel like the gyms and food and any of those things, is there a big difference?
Yeah, I mean, gym coaching, I think because with the US, your gyms are massive.
Mhm.
You have very big open gyms, very big. I mean, it's almost like a big gym in every corner.
Yeah,
But UK, you always find like with every town, they will have to have that one gym, the one bodybuilding, and it will always be like the old school dark gym and everything else like that. And you always have like, I mean, now is a lot more breaking because now social media, more people are coming into those gyms like that. But it
right.
was always that cult style following that was in the gym. Especially when you talk about bodybuilding, you had the fitness centers and you had the gyms. You know,
Mhm.
the gyms was always the guys with a hoodie up, headphones on, don't leave me alone, train, all that the whole dinginess and everything else. That was UK. That was UK bodybuilding scene. And then when you come to US, it's always a lot more life into a lot more glamorous, a lot more okay. This you have this big space and everything else around it, and it was a lot more just a lot more brighter and much more like happy atmosphere.
More
So you sort of
inviting,
see yeah more inviting atmosphere, because
yeah.
UK like most of the when you walk to the door, you're already like holy shit. You see the first guy seeing me and he's like, oh hey, can I help you? And he's always like, yo, what are you doing here? So you're always kind of like, yeah, you get out there, what's this, what's going on? So he's always more off-putting, like, ooh, I don't know if I can, you know. But I think in the States it was always the more opposite and stuff like that. So yeah, you kind of notice that. And then with food, UK food, I notice is the food are a lot more, they're a lot less processed
Mhm.
than US.
Okay.
Say that is that we always find them just a lot less processed here. While in the US, I know every time I go there, when we eat, we have to be so careful because I'm not used. We're not literally not used to their kind of food. So for the first few days, your stomach is like, okay, what is this? You know.
Right.
So so we sort of always notice the difference in terms of that. Is like
Yep.
it takes a few more days for you to adjust to US food when you travel there
Yeah.
than when you're in the UK. So yeah, those ones are something we kind of noticed along the line.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. So when I go to Europe, the food is different. I feel like you could just tell that the way, I don't know if it's the GMO situation, the
Yeah,
restrictions on certain things, but I felt
yeah,
like Europe, the food is lighter, more digestible.
yeah,
Then they
yeah,
come back, and then you lose like 4 or 5 pounds. You can go to Italy or you can go
yeah,
to different parts of Europe, and you're like, man, I lost 4 or 5 pounds, but I felt like I ate more. But I
yeah.
I lost all this weight, and plus people walk around more, I think, in
Oh
Europe.
yeah, yeah. That's something as well. That is a big one. That is a
Yeah.
big one because we got caught out. I think we got caught out in Pittsburgh for that because we had a B&B that was out of the city
Uh-huh.
and it was like half an hour from the airport. It was out of the city. So we got drove and we dropped there. We stayed at B&B tonight. And when we were supposed to head back to the airport to catch our flight to the UK, we were like, okay, we're just going to call an Uber. And we looked at the Uber app wasn't working there. It was like, oh, no, Uber's don't come out this side. And I was like, okay. And we were like, all right. And then at this point, Fuad dropped us off. He's already left for Canada. So we're sitting there with 2 bags and about to head up to the airport. We're like, okay, we don't know anybody here. We don't know. That's the first time I actually really felt like, oh shit, this is bad. We got to be at the airport. There's no cabs. There's no taxis. There's no buses. There's no. You just stranded.
You were like out in nowhere land, huh?
Like literally out of nowhere. It was stranded. I'm like, and I'm panicking at this point. I'm like, okay, who can we call? And I'm calling guys in other states and going, look, we're out here. We're trying to get to the airport. It's about half an hour's drive away. What do we do? And they're looking up on the internet, trying to find a taxi company. And we're here. Like, I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, there's nowhere in the UK from the top of freaking Scotland there that you would go and you wouldn't be able to get some kind of bus, taxi, or something. You'd be able to walk somewhere. But you were out of nowhere. We had these 2 suitcases in the street. I'm like, you can't even walk somewhere. Like he's just there. And I'm like, yeah, this is definitely. I'm like, yeah, this is different. This is definitely different. Yeah.
So what did you end up doing? How did you get to the airport?
So I called Fuad.
No, wait a minute. You're still in Pittsburgh right now?
We're still in Pittsburgh. I called him up and he was already left that morning. I'm like, bro, we're stuck. What are we gonna do? And he was like, okay, well, I'll call the gym that we trained at. See if the gym owner will come pick you up and take you to the airport. So we was like, okay, try that. Sometimes I'm calling my friend Mike. I'm like, Mike, what can you do? And he goes, okay, I found some taxi company and they'll come out to get you. But I think it was something like they were fucking how many miles away. I was like, okay, whoever gets here first, let's just go. We're running late. So eventually this taxi pulled up. And this was the first time where it was this really, really bad looking taxi. And they pulled up and there was this really big dude in there, this chubby dude in there. And I looked at this taxi and I looked in there and I was like, we're about to go missing. I remember calling Mike and I'm like, dude, is this taxi? He was like, yeah. He was like, I was like, yeah. I was like, okay, look, I'm gonna send you my position. I'm gonna put it on the phone. Call me back in about half an hour. If you don't pick up the phone, send for help. It was one of those, like, I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, this is just really, really like, whoa, you know. So I'm videoing everything. I'm like, yeah, just to know that this is my last known location, you know.
Bro, you're 300. How much do you weigh?
Dude, honest, hey, America, this thing in America, you guys got guns. You got guns. It's like muscles don't protect bullets. You got guns. In the UK, I'm like, yeah, what the hell? But America is always this thing where it's like, dude, every time I'm so intimidated. I'm so cautious, man. It's like
I'm dying right now.
You guys got guns. I'm like, it don't matter how big or scary you are. The more bigger you are, the more likely you are to get shot. So I'm like, yeah, when someone says something, no, okay, don't worry. I'll walk the other way. Don't worry about it. I'm like, I don't want to get in this thing, man. Because usually you don't have that. You literally got that everywhere. I'm like, damn, this is new to us.
That is hilarious. You're like the poor fat guy in the taxi. He's got a rundown taxi. You're scared of getting like kidnapped. You know?
I'm like, dude, hey, if he pulls a gun out, I'm like, yeah, well, what wallet do you want? Because it's like, man, because it is America. Because this is one thing, like, because UK we don't get like even like we don't get gun at all, like hardly ever. Because gun crime is something that makes national news. This is like this big thing, you know. So in the UK, you will never be in a position where you get in any kind of confrontation, either through traffic and you think the guy's going to pull a gun. It's like it's never going to happen.
But on the flip side of that, so do people, I guess, get in a lot of fights, like when they get drunk in the UK?
Yeah,
they at the pub. They get in a fight. Have you ever gotten into a fight? Have you ever like? I mean, you're such a big dude. I'm just curious, who is going to want to scrap with you, Samson? Samson, like I hate to tell you this, bro, but I don't care if the guy's even an MMA guy. He might be able to take you down, but he's going to think to himself twice about a 300+ pound dude that is 6 foot, super jacked, and you're going to be sitting there and you're like worried about somebody like, man, the guy might have a 22 on him.
I'm like, yeah, that's no for me. But like, yeah, okay.
I'd probably barely pierce your skin, knowing, you know, with the muscle you have. But you're like, have you ever gotten into a fight in the UK?
Oh, not since I started bodybuilding in the UK. No, and this is when I was in the rugby. Rugby was half of the game was a fight. You know,
Okay.
half the game of rugby was punch ups. You know, that was we
Oh, in the
wait for
middle.
those
Oh, you're talking about in the middle of the
in
game.
the middle of the game. We were like, yeah, we wait for those moments, and he's like, yeah, we're gonna meet you in the car park afterwards and carry it on. We those were part of the sport. So when you start obviously bodybuilding was just different. And bodybuilding, you got bigger, and the more one thing I noticed, right, the more bigger I got, the more calm I got in
Well, I'm
situations.
going to give you a little insight. Okay. And maybe it's because, I'm a little older than you, but
Yeah.
when the reason why you probably haven't gotten that many fights is because someone's going to look at you and be like, I don't want to fight that dude. He looks like somebody from Street Fighter that was like the final
Oh,
boss. Like, we don't want to, like, go against this guy. That's why you haven't been in any fights since
oh, yeah.
rugby, because now since you become a bodybuilder, it's kind of
Everybody's
like
like,
a deterrent.
yeah,
It's a
it's like,
deterrent, you know?
but then it's always like you always feel like because you like you this big black guy. When you go into places like when you go in a store and you obviously you have like you go to customer service, you're having like this confrontation over something or something, you can never raise your voice. The minute you raise your voice, they call it
Uh-huh.
security. So
Oh,
even though they
wow. And this
do
is
you
this is
wrong,
in the
you just
UK.
this is in the UK.
Okay.
So even no matter what they say, you know, the moment you show any sort of hostility or any kind of like, yo, what are you talking? That's it. They call it security. They having you out the building. So you always kind of go in the store and you're like, okay, I gotta be the most calm one there
Wow.
as much as possible because you just look immediately if you were having a conversation with two people and you people were going at it, anybody that just looks at the side will be like, he must be the bad guy. You know, so you just stick out like that in the UK, especially. So most of the times you always kind of have that in the back of your mind going, okay, if you want something done, you ain't gonna get it. You're not gonna get it that way. But on the other hand, it works a lot in traffic. The most funniest situation has always been in traffic. I remember it was it was about a few years ago. My mother-in-law flew in from Poland and she was about to fly home, and it was like 6 a.m. and we drove her to the airport, and I was driving around the airport car park looking for parking space.
Uh-huh.
She's in the car, my girl's in the car, and everything else, and we I kind of found a space, but it was going down the wrong way. So I was like, I'm just gonna sit down there real quick and just jump in the space. So I started driving down there, and a picking van came around the other way, sped up to block me in.
Uh-huh.
And he just literally sped up and parked right in front of me. And even though I tried to pull over to the side and let him through, no, he came in and he parked right in front of me, and he wouldn't move. And I'm like, damn. I'm like, what the hell is this guy's problem, man? Just go by, go by. And he just stood there, wouldn't move. And I'm like, dude, just go by. And I'm beeping like, dude, just go by. And he wouldn't move. And then he opened the door and got out his car. And because my mom, Haiti's mom, and my mom, they crack up every time they ever tell this story. So he opened the door and he's about to march up to the car. And I open the door and I step out. And they've never seen someone go so pale and change direction so fast in their life. He was like, and up to this day, Haiti's mom, they crack up laughing. It was like, it's the most funniest thing they've ever seen. Someone really do a 360
Dude, he
after
just
walking out
literally shit his pants. The guy literally shit his pants. He
really
came up
just
to
sitting
you
drunk on the
and thought he
car.
was going to punk you.
Oh,
And he comes over to your door, and then you open up the door, and he took one look, and
he,
he's like, "Man, this was like I just came over to say I'm sorry. I
I
just,
just
I just
moved
want to make sure
away.
you have a
I
really
didn't.
good day,
Oh my
and I really
god.
like your car. It looks very nice. It looks very comfortable, and
Oh
I
boy.
apologize for blocking you."
Oh man, so you do get that a lot. I think that was always the kind of like the funny ones in the UK. It's always when you have somebody kind of being out there, you step out of the car, put your head out, they look and they go, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden they turn around, they just look straight, and they're like, no, no, I'm not gonna make any more eye contact with him anymore. And it's always like, all right, okay. Oh boy.
That is a really good story. That is a really good story. I
Oh,
mean, when
man.
you're in the UK too, I guess, do you guys stay literally local, or are you guys going to a lot of shows? Because I mean, there are some more shows now. What have you been doing?
Yeah,
Because I have seen you, like, you were in Pittsburgh.
yeah,
You guys
yeah.
supposed
So
to Pittsburgh with the rest of the crew.
yep.
And are you traveling a little bit more?
Oh yeah, we always traveling, obviously not just around the UK, but obviously other countries as well. And we come to the States a lot and Canada, and we go through Europe, Germany, and everything else a lot more. And those kind of shows that we used to obviously compete in, we always go back there and sort of like just. I've been Two Bros One in the UK here. We always go back there all the time just to kind of like show support because they showed a lot of support to be coming up.
Mhm.
So I'm always good friends with Ian, and he always say, "Look, I'll be like, look, yeah, I'm coming to your show and just kind of just show my face a little bit if that's all right. And he's like, yeah, of course, and he's always welcome to that. And any other guest appearances and stuff that we have around the UK, seminars and stuff. So we always do a lot of traveling all the time. It's only when he starts sort of getting to that prep time that I'm like, okay, we set a date and go from that point on, no more. We just lock it in from that point.
How many weeks out do you normally like to shut it down?
I like to show down like I always do like the first because what happens is when I finish the last show, nobody's always like the Arnold. I'll have like 8 weeks of just pure traveling. And that point, that 8 weeks, I sort of have like my clear out period where I just completely let my body rest. And I'll do
Mhm.
all my traveling. I try to fit as much of it into that as I can. And then when we then start the off season, it goes into prep from that point on. So you're probably looking about like June. We
Mhm.
then lock everything in and go, okay, right. We're going to limit the traveling from this point.
Got it. Got it. And then when you're doing that, are you normally coming out here just all the way, just a week before the show, or are you
Yeah.
coming out here before that?
No, normally most of the time it's always coming out a week before the show. Because one thing we kind of found with me is I thrive at home. When I'm able to sort of lock in and just shut down at home, it just things just kind of just locks a well better for me. Because as you know, traveling, it takes a lot out of you, man. Traveling,
Yes.
obviously, where you have to, your food, everything that goes around it, it takes a lot of toll. Everything is different. So you always find that your progression is slowed the more you travel compared to
Yes.
when you're actually just in your own domain. So we always kind of try to like limit that and make sure that we only leave it to the very last moment before we then do the traveling to go out to the show. So we always kind of say, okay, week out, so I want to sort of fly out there. Because like I say, even like the more we eat and the food and everything else we do here, the more it works for me. The more you then, the minute you go off to the US, it's not like, okay, if you come in earlier, you have time to sort of adapt to that and adapt your
Right.
life to that before you can start locking in for the peak week. So it's like, look, you're better off just kind of like limited to as narrow as you can, so you have less time to have things go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really good because it's the stability of being home, but also
Yeah,
just giving yourself enough time to acclimate to the
yeah,
new city that you're
to
going
yeah,
to,
yeah,
getting your food situated, getting you the weather, everything else, just
yeah,
acclimating to everything
yeah.
that goes on with it. And then making sure you can find a place that has an Uber so you can get
Yeah,
get around.
yeah. No, don't stay in the outskirts of a city and freaking think that Uber is
Bro,
just gonna work.
were you
Oh my
still
God.
even in like I'm still surprised by this that
Honestly,
look, Pittsburgh is a very, very modernized city, bro. Where
yeah.
did you
We were
end up
not in
getting an
Pittsburgh. I do not
Airbnb?
believe we're in Pittsburgh. I think because when we looked at it, it was like a transition between states or something like that. Because we were definitely not in Pittsburgh. We were far outside. No, there was no
Who
high
set
speed
this up?
this is Fuad's booking. He booked the B&B
Oh,
for us. And I was like, okay, well, that's where we stay. And I'm like, yeah, we're going there. And we stayed there. And it was a nice place as well. It was a nice big house. All the hostile crew were there. And we
uh-huh.
were just the last one to leave. So I was just thinking, yeah, we'll just grab an Uber. There's no biggie, okay, see you guys next time. And they all left and we were the last one leaving the house locking up. And then when we were about to like, okay, let's call the Uber now, get the app out, it was like, um, there's no Uber. It's not
Wow.
working. And at that point, you're like, okay, let's find a tax company. You're Googling, you're doing, and it's like
Yeah.
nothing. And I'm like, okay, this is bad. This is
Yeah, you must
bad.
have been literally on the
Oh,
out on, as we call it, in the cuts
oh,
out there. And that's what we would call it, like out in the
oh,
outskirts of it.
oh,
So here's a note. Next time,
yeah.
do not be the last person that leaves,
No, we
the
learned that.
house.
We learned that because even when we went to Pittsburgh last time, I think we went to Mike's what's his name, Mike's gym. It
Mhm.
was in Pittsburgh as well, and we Hunter and all we trained there. And when we were about to, the guys were all heading out, and we were about to leave. And it was me, Hunter, and Justin, and another guy. We were there. We were like, okay, um, does anybody before they all leave and leave us behind? Can anybody check you can get an Uber here? And they checked, and they couldn't find one.
Oh
So
wow.
Justin had this small saloon, and he had all this stuff in there because he just drove down to Pittsburgh, and we're like, bro, if you leave, we all stuck here. So we're gonna have to find a way to all squeeze into this car. So we literally had to all squeeze in and him to drive us into the actual city. And I'm like, yeah, I remember this from last year. It's not happening again.
It's like a clown car, like a clown car where
It
you get
was
all
really
these
like a
clowns that
clown
just
car. It was,
jump
I
out.
mean, the suspension, the body and the suspension must have just be rubbing because it was so packed. You had Hunter sitting up back with this other guy, Justin. I'm sitting in the front with Justin. That thing was just rolling slowly.
That's
Oh boy.
That, yeah, that should be a definitely a video you guys got to do next time. Is talk about around. That would have gotten
Oh
some
boy.
massive views. So when you come out here, besides thinking everybody is strapped with a gun, that's only in
Oh.
Texas, bro. That's only in Texas.
Oh
That's only in
damn.
Texas. Now I can't, speak for New York because New York's got very tough gun laws.
Oh
Um,
man. Oh
but the bad guys will still get them if they want them, but that's my opinion.
yeah.
So where do you like going, and where's your favorite place to train whenever you're traveling? Like if you come to the States and everything else.
Because every time we've always stayed in like different places. Obviously, like when I go to Texas, I stay at Ben's place and I train at Ben. He has like a gym like literally outside his house, outside his
Okay.
door.
Okay.
The only thing is hot like the hell out there. I mean, at that kind of heat, it's like 45 degrees and of Celsius and stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so hot. I'm
It's
like,
like
I don't even know how.
120 degrees for those of
Yeah,
you that are looking
and
for
so
Fahrenheit.
humid and stuff. I'm
Yeah.
like, how do you survive out here?
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I don't know how people live in Texas. I'm like, dude, how does anybody be living there? I'm like, it's like an oven. So that one has always kind of been like, yeah, I don't know about that. My sister lives over in Florida, so I've
Okay.
been down there. She
What
lives in
city does she
Tampa,
live in?
and Tampa,
Oh, in
Tampa. So
Tampa,
that's what I've been to,
in
yeah.
Derek's
So I've been out
backyard.
to yeah. So I've been to MI40 gym to train a few
Okay.
times over there. Um, Obviously we got to Ohio
Have you been to
when
Have you been to Bev's up in at Steve Weinberger's gym? Have you been up there?
yes. We went
Yes.
to New York last year. We were
Yeah.
in New York for 7 days last year. That's when we were we went around New York. New York is crazy. New York is crazy. I can say this one, I gotta say New York has to be one city that for some reason last year I was in New York 7 times last year.
Seven
In
times.
seven separate occasions. I was there. And literally, the only time I meant to be there, the most time I went was twice. But somehow I ended up being stranded there 7 times last year. And one of the time was when we were trying to get to Pittsburgh. We landed in New York as a stopover, and our
Okay.
flight got canceled. And it
Okay.
was middle of the night, and we were like, okay. And it was JFK. And we went to them and said, okay, we're supposed to catch a connecting flight to Pittsburgh.
Okay.
I just got this text message, my flight's been canceled. What do you guys have? What do you do? And it was on a Friday, and they were like, "Oh, there's no flight till Monday." And I'm like, "I'm flying home on Monday." So, and they were like, "Oh, well, we can't help you. Everybody's stranded." And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Oh, we can't help you. Everybody's stranded. We don't have any flights till Monday." And they literally didn't give a damn. That was it. It was like, well, okay, tough. That's it. And I we were like, no, really? Like, we kind of kicking off us, and they didn't care. They were like, "Yep, there's no flights till Monday. What do you want me to do? That's it." And I was like, okay. Like, I remember calling for it going, bro, we have a problem. I'm stuck in New York. Flights been canceled. There's no flights. There's nothing. What we don't know what to do. And he said, okay, get a car, go to the hire place, get a car, and drive to Pittsburgh. It's only 7 hours. You can do it. I'm like, okay, cool. So we go to the car hire place. Went
Uh-huh.
there. Every single person that was in New York that day had the same exact idea because all their cars were gone.
Right.
There was no cars available. I'm like, what? And we go in Google, we're checking all the car companies around the whole New York area. They were all out. They were all gone.
They were all
And
taken.
I'm all taken. And I'm just like, what the hell? At this point, you're literally going, I'm like, okay, can I get a flight home then? Nope. No flight home either. So I was like, so are you trying to tell me I'm stranded here in JFK Airport, just stranded? I'm like, I'm like, this is not happening. I'm like, this is no, this, and they were so unhelpful. And it was the most frustrating thing I've ever been in a position before. I'm like, you're not even trying to suggest stuff that makes sense. You're not even trying to like, okay, well, you could do this, or you can go get a hotel. You could nothing. It was just like, well, everybody's in the same boat. So what do you want to do? And so we were kind of like, so I called Fuad up, and we were meeting him. He just drove from Canada to Pittsburgh because he was supposed to meet us there.
Okay.
And I remember it was already 8 p.m. And I called him. I said, hey, there's no hire car. There's no, even at the time, there was no hotels available. There was no rooms in the area, hotels that were not available either. I'm like, what the hell? Everything was just grounded. So I'm like, look, there's no hire car, there's no hotel, there's no flights. We don't know what to do. We're literally stuck here. We don't know what to do. And that's when it was literally last year. That's why he got in his car. He goes, okay, right. You know what I'm doing? I'm gonna come pick you up. So at 8 p.m., he drove from Pittsburgh to New York, JFK, to pick us up, and then drove back that same night all the way back to Pittsburgh again.
Wow.
And it was like I called it was a rescue mission. I was like, this is crazy.
That
Because even then
literally was a
it
rescue
was
mission, man.
I was like, man, I was like, bro, wow. Because that was the same trip that when we were trying to get home from Pittsburgh, we got stuck out in the house and we couldn't get a freaking Uber to the airport.
Well, this
And
was
that
this
was one
last year. This was this
this
year.
was last year. This was last year.
Oh, last
And I
year.
remember,
Last year.
oh yeah. And I was just thinking, man, this has been one hell of a trip.
Wow.
It's been one hell of a trip. I remember because it was, well, yeah, I was 8 weeks out at the time, 8 weeks out from the Olympia at
Oh,
the time.
wow.
So this was like a really like bad weekend, and I'm just like, man, okay, what else do you say? And he's like, New York has never, every time we go to New York, it's definitely been one crazy experience after another.
That is crazy. But so when you go down to Tampa, you said you liked it down there,
Oh yeah,
down in
we like
Florida?
Tampa, Orlando last year as well. Liked Orlando. It was that was a lot nicer. That was a lot more. I think people are a lot more chill there. They're a lot more happy in Florida, man. They're just a lot more like,
Yeah.
yeah, hey, how you doing? And
Yeah.
a lot more chilled out there, and kind of like that a lot. So you
Maybe New
definitely
York is
notice.
New York a little
Yeah.
more like England, a
Oh my God, New
little.
York is a bit more New York is they're a bit rude, man. New York, they just don't give a fuck. They make you know that we don't care. And I'm like, okay, all right then. I'm just gonna go see my business then, you
Have you
know.
got a chance to visit California yet?
Oh yeah, we visited California. Oh, it was a long time ago. The first time we visited California was 2021 or 2018, was it? Yeah, 2018. That was the first time we visited California.
How was
And that
that?
was when it was like the bodybuilding journey, man. I wanted to go to the Ghost Gym,
Oh, the
Venice
Southern California.
Beach. Yeah, I think that was my, I think second, third time to the States. That was Mel's like first time. So we had all these like places we wanted to go see and go to the valley and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And we got to do that. And that was a shock for us, man. Honestly, that was California is nice, but we weren't ready because the vision we have of California is what you
Uh-huh.
see in the movies.
Okay.
Venice Beach, everything you see is what you see in the movies in California.
Right.
So when you go out there, you're thinking, I'm going to see Venice Beach. People roller skating on the beach and all sunshine and
You see all
all
the
pretty
homeless
and like all
people.
this.
You see all the
Oh my
homeless
God,
people.
dude. When we showed up, and I'm like, dude, this is almost like an Instagram filter that we got tricked with, man. I'm like, dude, what the hell? What the hell is this? I was like, this isn't Venice Beach. This isn't Muscle Beach. What? There was just homeless people everywhere.
Yeah.
It was just everywhere. And it was like, okay, yeah, this is it didn't say this in the brochure. It definitely
They
show this
say this in the
outside. I'm like,
brochure.
this was different. I'm like, okay. And I remember that was another time because we were literally trying to see California and we took a bus. I don't know, we took it over to the Hollywood, the Hollywood sign thing.
Uh-huh.
At the conservatory town thing
Yeah.
that's up the hill. We went there, had a look around. Wow, it was a beautiful day, sunny day, and everything else. And then I don't even know what happened. For some reason, we weren't going to take a bus back to our hotel.
Okay.
So, okay, cool. On a bus, starts going. Um, no one tells you don't take the bus in California.
No, dude.
Nobody tells you, look, we're from the UK. We have public transportation. We have taxis. We got buses. We got trains. People just ride them. There's no,
Yeah.
but in California, no one tells you you don't take the bus in California because we sat on that bus. I think it was like an hour's ride, and he went to the most neighborhoods I've the kind of neighborhoods I see in gangster movies.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm like, holy crap, and we were so shocked. At one point, we got off the bus and we said, okay, we're going to take the subway.
Oh,
So
the
we
story
got
just
off the
keeps getting
bus.
better.
It's taking the fact this is like middle of the afternoon. It's like 2 p.m. It's not even like late. It's like 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Go off the bus, go to the subway. I don't even know what station or where this was. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go down, and they have like the card machines. I'm gonna buy a train card. Walk down the subway, got to the machine. I look around, there's nobody, like quiet, and it's just, and I'm looking around going, you can almost hear a tumbleweed blow by. I'm like, this feels a bit scary down here. I'm like, and we both looked at each other going, let's not do this. Let's just go back on the surface where the sun is. Let's just go back there. I remember just thinking, nah, we just gonna go back upstairs. And I mean, that was California was an experience because it was definitely what you see in the movies and what it looks like on the ground is it's not the same. It's definitely
Yeah.
not the same
Yeah.
thing.
Unfortunately,
So,
it's changed a lot. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we moved. But it was
hmm,
when you go down to Venice Beach, I mean, I haven't been there in a minute, but when I was down there, probably around the same time you were, you would be down there and they would look at you like, well, why aren't you homeless? Everybody here's supposed to be homeless.
wow,
You're like,
okay,
yeah, because it was like
yeah,
it had taken over. All the tents were there and they were just
yeah.
lined up. Is that when you went, when they were all lined up,
Yep,
all the
yep. We had the
tents and all the
lines up,
homeless
and then when
encampment?
they, yep, yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was definitely a culture shock because like I mean people that don't know in the UK, we don't have a lot of homelessness in the UK.
Right.
It's not something that is if you see one, it'll probably be like in a city in London, it'll probably be the one guy somewhere. And it's rarely ever seen. It's something that's very, very sort of like and even then they get government helps and stuff like that. So there's always some kind of
Mhm.
like control facility. So you never really see a lot of it. So when you come from the UK, you don't really see that. When you go to the States, you see it in the cities, and it's a big thing for you. It's like it's really like a eye opener. You think, holy shit, like you don't expect that, It's so it's something that if you're not used to, it really triggers you off, and you're kind of like, damn. And people that are there, they're kind of used to it. They just kind of walk on, and it doesn't really phase them. But for us, we look at it going, holy crap, this is we didn't, it's something that you really not used to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very sad because it's such a beautiful place.
Yeah,
And it's just like you have a beautiful beach, you have like, the mountains are nearby, you have
yep,
Hollywood, you have all of these things. You got Disneyland within a couple of hours away. You have so many different nice things about it. But then when you're like, have this situation with this homeless situation,
yeah,
it really takes so much away from it. I remember Hadi when he came and we were
yeah.
in even San Jose. And San Jose is nowhere near the size of the city of LA. And he would tell me, I think there's more homeless people here than there is back in Iran. And you're
Wow.
like, you think Iran, is like a third world
Yeah,
country
you
in,
have
in a
that.
lot of
Yeah.
ways. And
Mm.
he was like, this is really bad.
Wow.
And then now he comes to Texas. We don't have nearly as many,
Yeah.
especially, where we live. And
Yeah.
he's just like, okay, it's much
This is
cleaner and
different.
everything
Much
else. But
cleaner
I
over
think a
there.
lot of it is the politics and is involved in that.
Mm. Yeah.
And I feel like how the state is being governed has a lot to say about that.
Yeah, about it. Yeah.
Yeah, but and it's sad because like you went on like when you said like you went on the bus, I was like, man, are you sure it wasn't the tour bus? Because if you went on a
Oh no,
regular
it was a
bus,
normal bus. It was a
yeah,
normal. Honestly, it's like because the thing is, you kind of come from the UK. You don't really know this thing.
right,
You just think you could do it anywhere in the UK. You could do it in Europe. You could just get on a bus and it takes you to the destination. You get normal, regular people ride the bus. People ride the
right.
bus to work. So you kind of assume that being in the
It's
States, it
yeah,
should be just
just
as
as good, if
normal.
not better,
Yeah, if not
right?
better. So you kind of just say, okay, jump on. Because we jumped at the bus at the first stop right at Valley, there was nobody on the bus. So you're
Right.
like, great, we're going bus ride. We can this way we can see more of California as we go down to our hotel.
Yeah.
And yeah, we got to see California as we go down to our hotel.
You probably went through South Central,
Oh,
yeah. So you have
it
Compton,
definitely
South Central, so you're going through there.
man. Yeah, it definitely was. It was definitely eye opening. That was definitely like okay. Yeah, this is I feel like this is
They're
kind of
telling
broken into
the
a
bus
gangster
driver
movie.
is trying to tell you to duck. He's like, okay, in this area, just he's
Oh damn.
like,
Oh my God. He's
yeah,
yeah.
don't be wearing any certain colors,
Colors in the I'm like, no, I like this red shirt. I just thought it was a cool shirt. I didn't know
Yeah,
anything about it.
no,
Oh
no,
man.
it's just yeah, unfortunately, like
Oh,
like that's what it is, man. And then when you go down there, it sucks because it sucks for me because as an American, you sit there and you want people that come into this country to be able to
yeah,
feel that way. But when you're in Rome or when I'm in different parts, of
yeah,
even the UK, the public transportation is a real thing.
yeah.
Here, it's a secondary thought. It's
It's a
not
second,
even a
yeah.
thing, unless you're in maybe New York, even in New York,
Okay,
it's
with
not
this,
the safest place
yeah,
either, but at least it's
you have better
heavily
more.
used, right?
Yeah,
And but most countries have a very sophisticated, if you go to Paris, you go to London,
yep, yep,
you got the tube,
yeah,
you know? So, mind the gap, bro, mind the gap,
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
you know? They call it, what
So
do they
yeah,
still call it, the underground?
yep. They call it so the definitely still call underground, the London Underground, the Mind the Gap, the all that. Yep, this
Yep.
one is
And
definitely.
yeah, so people are using that. But then
Mm,
we are such a car-driven society here that
yeah,
everything is about driving around and everything is so far apart that it's just like they don't take public transportation the same way, which is sad because
yeah. Because something
it
I know
really,
is
I
because
feel
like
like
even
they should.
yeah, because something I know we kind of notice as well is obviously being in the US so many times is like you really have to be driving to really kind of go about that much. You can't. It's not a walking sort of thing, and because everything's so spread out as well, it's like you see the closest store and it's like, oh, because in the UK, if you open your app on Google App on Map and it says, oh, there's a shop 5 minutes away,
Right.
5 minutes walk away, you're like, okay, cool, let's just walk. And you
Right.
just walk to the shop and the shop is there and you walk home. In the US, when he says it's 5 minutes walk away, it's like you start walking and you're like, okay, there's like a freaking highway this way, there's a freaking more, and you were like, where the hell? You just end up in the middle of nowhere, just thinking when they meant walk, they really meant walk. And he's like, damn, you can't walk to these places.
No.
It's definitely, yeah, you gotta be driving, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. You got to be driving. And then speaking of that too, do you feel a change when you come here and you have to drive on the other side of the road? You come and rent a car and you're
Oh
on the other
yeah,
side of the,
yeah.
in the,
It's
how's
different.
that?
It's something like it's something that you have to pay real because the first time you always get the rental car and you sit in there, it's always like, man, you got to pay really full attention on because you automatically now have to really think about everything. You know, one, the stereo wheel is on the other side, the road is on the other side, and then the signs and everything else is different. So you have to really have to pay really close attention. And you following Google Maps, like really paying attention. Mel is there kind of navigating me and go, okay, you got to be on this lane, you got to be on that lane, and we have to really pay attention. And it's only when you've done it for like a day or two, that's when you then finally get back into the routine of it and then you relax.
You
And then
start getting
that's when
used
you
to it.
kind of go, okay, now you know what you're doing again.
Right, right, right. Well, we had a couple of questions from some of the guys here at the office. They were like really interested about kind of how the interactions were. And, I always talk bodybuilding here at the office. And one of the things that I thought that they made a good point was that they're like, how is the camaraderie now backstage? Do you feel like everybody is a bit different, like with each other? Or when you're backstage at the Olympia or the Arnold, how do you take it? Because I know that they're like the Hottie, Derek, you
Yeah.
got Hunter, you got like some people that are kind of closer
Mhm.
in friendships. But
Yeah.
do you feel like it's just kind of, like it's kind of like a little bit clicky backstage, or is
It's
it more
no, and
just
now
all over?
it's changed. Now it's so changed. Now it's so much friendlier, so much better. You know, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to speak from my experience, but
Right.
it's like I remember the first time I did a big show
Okay.
backstage, and the first time I even did the Olympia and everything else. It felt like okay, everybody in their spot, everybody's getting their zone, and you
Okay.
almost just feel like okay, just gonna stand here and mind my business, and so get ready. And you felt like that a bit. But then when as time goes on, when we sort of got to know the guys and you start, we chat on messaging, we speak all the time, we train together. When we go backstage now, it's like, hey, bro, hey, how you been? How you been? And we all talk and we all get on with each other a lot better. And it's sort of what it does, it diffuses that stiffness of backstage, that
Hmm.
so stiffness you used to always get when you're being backstage and show and everybody's sort of like giving each other the eye and everybody's kind of like this putting their hard face on.
Hmm.
And I always kind of make a joke about it, like, why is it that we act backstage like we're about to go in and have a battle and have a fight when strictly we're going to stand there and get judged by someone else?
Right.
So whatever I feel for you and you feel for me, it doesn't really make a difference because at the end of the day, we don't get to make the call.
Correct.
So when you sort of kind of go into that more of that mentality and thinking, look, we all friends, we all know that we all want this, we all know we all worked our hard ourselves for it. It makes no difference. At the end of the day, we've all done everything we can to be here. So when we stand there, we don't get to make the call. So it makes no sense for me to look at you and be like, okay, come on now, let's. Like, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't. It doesn't. It makes no sense. We're not going to punch each other. We're not going to fight each other. So why bother? So because it's something that actually funny. It's something that Sean Ray said, and it made me really think. He said it a few years ago, and he said now they've retired, they realize those little moments they have backstage, they only have each other to share it with and talk back about
Mm.
it with. And they realize that now that they've seen it from this point, they wish they had engage more with each other because they're the only ones that know what happened backstage in 1980 Olympia, what happened backstage in 2000 Olympia, because they're the only ones that were there. That was
Right.
actually that moment, athletes that were there. So they now have this separate memories of it that they're now talking about. And it's taking years for them to get to that. So
Right.
you kind of sit there and going, this is our time. This is us. If we don't build this memory with each other here, once it's gone, it's gone. We're gonna later on when we retire say, "Oh yeah, remember that year when you stood there and I stood here and we didn't say nothing." And it's like, so why don't we make memories that we can actually sort of move forward with and say, "Look, yeah, I was with him backstage in 2025, and I was with him backstage at this, and I remember, oh yeah, I remember the year you did this." And we create those memories that we will remember way after the results are done and way after the competition is over, and we can be like, "Yeah, man, that was a great show. We had a great time in it." So I kind of use that and just think, okay, when you're backstage, as much as it is almost like this self thing of just locking up and being like, okay, I don't want to see the world. Look, open up to it. Open up to the idea that don't talk to the next guy and say, hey, how you doing, man? How you been? How's your kids? I saw you post this. Where have you been? And break that ice and make everything feels like, you know what, we're just us. Yeah, we
Yeah.
do this, but this is us. This is our relationship. This is what we have. And we're gonna be doing this for a long time. So we might as well get to like each other.
Right. Right. And I also think to take that a step further, you guys have a very amazing opportunity to be able to help each other be able to
Yeah.
generate more money and more
Yeah.
accomplishments and more sponsorships than
Yeah.
you ever have
Yep.
through social presence, right?
Yeah.
And being able to chop it up. Yeah, it's good to get a little bit of rivalry going or a little bit
Yeah.
of crap talking, and I'm going to get to
Yeah.
that too because I do want to ask you about how that went because with
Yeah.
Derek and Nick. But
Yeah.
the situation is now that high tide raises all ships. When you
Yep.
have it more
Exactly.
exciting in bodybuilding, what I
Yeah.
want you guys all to know, it helps all of you.
All of
It
us.
helps
Yeah.
you all because what
Yeah.
it does is it creates attention in a positive way.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it in a negative way. You don't have to do it
No.
in a way where you're going to bring, because I feel like sometimes some of the older school bodybuilders like to talk people down. And I don't know
Yes.
what
Yeah.
it is
True.
because it's almost like I feel a little bit of sour grapes because of the fact that you guys are getting paid so much more than they did,
Yeah.
back in the day. And in their
Hmm.
minds, they had to go against legends, but they don't understand. You guys are all the future legends,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You guys right
Yeah.
now are the future legends. So even
Yep.
though you haven't gone through the Dorian Yateses and the Ronnie Colemans
Yep.
and the Phil Heaths
Whenever.
and what,
Yep.
Jay Cutlers of the world yet, but right now, in 5 years, they're going to say it's going to be the Derricks and the Samsons and the Nicks
Yep.
and the, all of
Yeah.
these guys and the Hunters. You guys are going to be the next set of amazing athletes that everyone's going to talk about. It's just because it hasn't happened yet. They're saying, well,
Doesn't mean.
my
Yeah.
era was harder. And oh,
Yeah.
and by the
Yeah.
way, we only made 100 grand at the Olympia, you know, and now, between the two shows, you're making almost $1 million, right?
True.
Between the
Yeah.
Olympia and the
Exactly.
Arnold.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
And
I
that's
feel like,
exactly it.
what, that sour grapes has got to be put apart, put aside. And now it's just it's a new era. And I feel like
Yep.
being able to help you guys elevate. So taking that thought process and you guys doing the video for the Olympia and
Yeah.
having you, Derek, and Nick, how was that? I know that Tarek
Well,
was
that
kind
was
of getting you riled up a little bit.
Yeah, but Denver always does that, man. He always tries to do that, and we all kind of laugh about it. And the thing is, this one thing is when the camera comes on, we all get along, man. We go to dinner
Yeah.
together, we talk about it. I ask, "Oh, dude, how's your daughter doing? Nick, how's your training going?" We talk. It's we get to know each other outside because we all follow each other on social media. We know what's
Uh-huh.
up. We know what's going through. So it creates a lot of conversation. It creates a lot of normalcy to be able to speak to this guy. Because I always say this: with this sport, we all go through the same thing, and we're the only one that know what it feels like to go through it.
Right.
You know, when you get a bunch of negativity from fans and stuff like that, and you get hammered with it, no one will understand what that feels like more than me and
Right.
more than him because he's been through
Right.
it as well. He goes through it as well. So when they
Right.
say, "Yeah, man, I hate that, dude, that really hurts me or it gets to me this way," how do you do it? How do you do it? We are the only ones that can truly answer each other's questions. So having that connection with each other to be able to speak and say, "Look, man, look, yeah, it was hard, man, but you know what? Eventually it went past. Eventually it was okay." And speak to our experiences with each other, it brings us closer. So it doesn't matter when the lights come on, the camera comes on, you do a little trash talking, and yeah, what are you doing? deep down, we know, look, I always say, look, these are surface things.
Yeah.
You know, in the deep down, the bonds that's created on a stage is something that no one truly understands. You know, you're going up against somebody that is at the pinnacle of their sport, and they're bringing the absolute best to be the best in the world. And because of that, you know, every single morning, every day, you have to do the same, or else you get left behind.
Mhm.
So you have this person's thought process. You have that thought process within each other for months and months going by, backwards and forward. And you know, no matter how hard you're training, he's doing the same or more. So when you know that you stand there backstage at each other, you stand there, you get on stage and you go to the battle, when you look at them, you go, you know what? I know because of him, I was able to push to my hardest point and got to a new level because I knew he was there. So I have nothing but respect for him. So, and you know, this is what I think today people tend to misunderstand with social media and everybody giving their chime. It's like, I cannot hate a guy that brought his best and I brought my best and he got better of me. I just can't. I'm like, I know how hard I train. I know how hard I killed myself to be here.
Right.
So he must have done the same. He must have gone through the same struggle. He must have been through the same mindset. He must have had the same feedback and same flaws and everything I was going through him. And he still stood here and brought his best to me. So I have nothing but respect for him. So this is what I found like now is happening with us. We know the struggle we'll go through, not just on stage, but at home, on social media. We know that what we go through. So we are the only ones that are the best one to relate to because the other generations, as much as they had it, they never had to deal with that.
Nope.
They didn't have to deal with that. And this was like, you might get an article written on the magazine, and if you don't see the magazine, it never happened.
Right.
But this is like right there in
Right.
your face every single day. You can see it.
Yes.
It's right there. So you have to be able to do more than grow a thick skin because this one is you can grow as thick a skin as you want, but it will get through. So the only person that can go to that been through it with you at the same time is only the guy that's standing next to you.
Right.
He's the only one that can tell you, look, yeah, we went through it too.
Right.
Yeah, bro, how you feeling? How you feeling? Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
good, man. How you doing? Yeah, and we can communicate, and that I think that is something that brings us closer now more than anything else.
Oh, I completely agree with you. I think you guys are a band of brothers up there because, like you said, nobody else in no other generation of bodybuilding has had to deal with all of the influences of social media. And
Yeah,
you don't have 11 judges, you have 1 million judges, and
yeah,
everybody is so judgmental. And it doesn't come back out on newsstands 3 months afterwards with select pictures. You have
no,
1 million different
oh,
cameras from the
yep,
audience taking every single angle. You're under a
yep,
microscope. And I've been saying
yep,
this now for years. And you also have something that they never had to deal with, which is a 2 day show. You
yeah,
now have
yeah.
a 2 day show.
2 day show.
So you have to do double the work they did because now
Yeah,
you have to double peak. They didn't have to do that
yep,
back in the day. They were getting on prejudging would be at noon. Their finals would be at 7, 8 o'clock. It would be over. Now you have
over.
to double peak for a show while the internet goes crazy. And then what do you
Crazy.
bring back the
Yeah,
second day?
yeah, and it's yeah, it's a tough one. So that's why I can say like I look at guys, I look at Derek, I look at Nick, I look at Hardy, I look at all the guys that are in the same boat as me, and I have nothing but respect for them. I have nothing but respect for them because I know no matter how hard I must feel or how hard it must feel for me, they're going through exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's like that. It's sort of when you look at them and you see how they deal with it, and you kind of look and go, man, okay, he's holding in that shit. I better do the same, you
Yeah.
know. So he has that because, like I said, there's no other generation that have been through it. So you kind of speak to them and say, hey, how did you deal with it? They never went through it. So you don't have many people to talk to and say, hey, when they was calling you and say, oh, you got a shit leg and you got shit back, and everybody was back chanting and shouting about it. How did you cope?
Right.
So we're the only ones that know what it feels like. So we're the only ones we can actually talk to about it.
Right.
So it's like it's having that relationship enough to feel like, look, bro, don't worry, you can reach out to me and we can talk about it. Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
fine. And it really does help. It really does
No,
help.
absolutely. I think you guys have banded together really well. And I can't wait because I know all you guys are going to be bringing it for the Olympia. And the one final thing that I need to be able to say is from a question from my son.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Okay. Cameron, wants to know, do you know that you look, he says, whether or not, if anybody ever told you, you look like Draymond Green from the
Oh
Warriors?
no. Oh
No?
really? No,
Yeah.
that one I've not heard. That one I have
Okay.
definitely not heard. Oh wow.
Yeah. So
Oh,
Draymond, he go, you got to ask him if he ever,
I gotta
anybody
check.
ever says he looks like Draymond. So
Oh,
Draymond
that's a
Green,
first.
and he's a, yeah. So
I
I don't
gotta
know if
check
you're
that one
familiar.
out
He's a
because
very, very
that's
good
definitely
basketball
new to me.
player.
Oh
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. But they
That's
said
definitely
you are a yoked, he says you look like a yoked, buffed out Draymond
oh my.
Green. So now you guys, who's
Oh
listening
no,
to this,
I'm gonna
go in the comments below. Let me know if you think Samson looks like Draymond, you
oh
know?
damn. Oh
So
man, I'm gonna
Draymond
have that
needs to
in my head
stand
now. I
in.
gotta go check. I'll check that. I have it in my head now. I'm like, yeah,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
that's a new one for sure.
Yeah, he's a really,
Oh,
really good basketball player. But he said
oh
that
wow.
because he's really big into the in the NBA. So my son
Yeah.
loves watching it. And he's
Oh wow.
obviously grew up with bodybuilding,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Oh no. So he's
Yeah, so he's like he looks at people and he's like
oh,
he looks like a buffed out, Draymond Green. So, yeah, so now you can go look it up and people
oh
online
man.
definitely tell us in the
Check it
bot
out.
below in the comments, does he look like Draymond Green or
Okay.
does Draymond Green look a little bit like Samson Dowda?
Okay.
But brother, I really appreciate your time. I know you got a lot going on. It's evening time in the UK. Very, very thankful that we were able to finally get together. And I just want to say I really appreciate you for, putting the time in to be able to spend on the Truth Podcast. It's been an honor.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you for having me. Honestly, it's definitely been a privilege being on here. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hany Rambod, Samson Dowda, and that's the truth.